And now for the finale.
In the blue corner, the insanity generator, the creator of psychosis, the old god himself, Yogg-Saron. In the red corner, 25 normal human adventurers trying to defeat the undefeatable. Can they do it?
Let's find out! Hello everyone, Moobies here, and in this video we'll discuss the final boss of the Ulduar raid, Yogg-Saron. Yogg-Saron is a 3-phase fight with a multitude of adds and abilities. You can also use the assistance of the keepers or choose not to use the assistance of the keepers. This affects how difficult the fight is. Killing Yogg with 1 keeper is the true hard mode. Killing Yogg with 0 keepers is the hardest fight in the phase and likely the hardest fight in the expansion. It also is required to complete progression on Warcraft logs. If you're looking to boost your rank, Yogg 0 must be killed in order to achieve full points. First, we'll discuss the keepers and how they assist. For each keeper assisting, your raid gains 10% damage done, and each keeper grants an additional bonus to either healing, damage taken, movement speed, or max HP. Freya buffs healing by 20% and provides sanity wells, which regenerate 10% of sanity every 2 seconds and reduce damage taken by 50% to all players standing in them. Hodir reduces damage taken by 20% and can use Hodir's protective gaze to save a player from what would otherwise be a killing blow, has a 25-second cooldown. Mimiron buffs movement speed by 20% and can use Destabilization Matrix to reduce the attack speed by 100% and casting speed by 300% of all Crusher and Corruptor tentacles during Phase 2. And finally, Thorim increases hit points by 20% and can use Titanic Storm, which kills the Immortal Guardians in Phase 3 when they hit 1% HP. Throughout the fight, everyone in the raid will have a sanity debuff starting at 100. If the counter reaches 0, you will become mind controlled and will need to be killed. You will be unable to be battle rezzed as you will not regain sanity once it hits 0. The strategy for this fight remains very similar even if you reduce the number of keepers that are helping you. If you're shooting for 1 light in the darkness, there is no other option but using Thorim as your 1 keeper. Killing the Immortal Guardians in Phase 3 will ensure that you have a kill. For 0 light, handling the Immortal Guardians in Phase 3 becomes a whole new ballgame. We'll talk about that in a minute. Phase 1. Sarah's the Ally. Sarah has 4 abilities. The first is Sarah's Fervor. This increases damage done by 20% and damage taken by 100% for 15 seconds. It's cast on a random raid member. Sarah's Blessing, which heals for 30,000 instantly, but does 3,000 shadow damage every 1 second for 20 seconds for 60,000 damage total. This is also cast on a random raid member. Next is Sarah's Anger. This inflicts 12.5 thousand shadow damage every 3 seconds for 12 seconds, but increases physical damage done by 12,000. This is cast on a random Guardian of Yogg-Saron. And finally, we have the Guardians of Yogg-Saron. These spawn slowly at first and more quickly as the phase goes on. They cast Dark Volley, which inflicts 10,000 shadow damage to everyone in 35 yards and reduces healing done to them by 25% for 10 seconds. This can and should be interrupted. On death, they'll cast Shadow Nova, which deals 26,000 shadow damage to everyone in a 15-yard range. This is the only way to deal damage to Sarah. Phase 1 is the same in all modes of the fight. You'll see yellow and green clouds rotating around the room in orbit of Sarah. Do not touch them. They are bigger than they appear to be. Touching a cloud will spawn an additional Guardian of Yogg-Saron. It will also call out in your chat window who touched it. Call these people out. You'll need to kill 8 Guardians of Yogg-Saron near Sarah to complete the phase. We tried to use the door strat where you keep your entire raid by the door to avoid the clouds, but we found this more difficult than having a raid just avoid them and be aware. We did, however, keep our main tank and melee a bit further out and not stacked on Sarah. This allowed melee DPS to DPS freely without worrying about the clouds. Once the Guardian got to 40%, the second tank would taunt it and run it in towards Sarah, and the range will finish it off. Ensure you do not lose Guardians. Losing early Guardians that don't deal damage to Sarah will hurt you in the long run, as by the time you get to the 8th or 9th Guardian automatically spawning, it's harder to keep pace as they spawn faster and faster. As you get more gear, you can spawn an additional Guardian or two at the start of the fight to expedite this phase. This is a farm-only strat and should not be used until your guild has a good handle on the fight. Phase 2. Sarah the Enemy. The first ability is Psychosis. This inflicts 7,500 shadow damage and reduces sanity by 12%. Cast on a random raid member. Malady of the Mind inflicts 5,000 shadow damage and causes a fear effect for 4 seconds. At the end of the 4 seconds, Malady will attempt to jump to another player within 10 yards. If no one is in range, it will expire. It reduces sanity by 3%. Brain Link connects 2 random raid members with a beam, causing them to suffer 3,000 shadow damage and 2% sanity loss every 1 second they are more than 20 yards away from each other. Red beam is bad, white beam is good. This will last for 30 seconds or until one person enters a portal. Death Ray summons 4 death orbs, inflicting 10,000 shadow damage per second and reducing massive sanity to players standing in them. Descend to Madness. After 90 seconds, then 60 seconds thereafter, Yogg will open 10 portals to the brain of Yogg-Saron. And finally, Induce Madness. This is cast when the portals open, and after 60 seconds will make anyone still in the brain of Yogg-Saron go insane and become mind-controlled, leading to a death. During this phase, 3 tentacle adds will spawn. Crusher Tentacles. These erupt as they spawn, dealing 2,000 physical damage and knocking players back. They cast Diminish Power, which reduces the damage of everyone in the raid by 20%. It can be interrupted by a melee special attack, not an auto attack. Attacks against the Crushers buff them with Focused Anger, increasing their damage done and attack speed by 3% per stack. This lasts for 1 second unless refreshed. Constrictor Tentacles squeeze a random target, inflicting 7,500 physical damage every 2 seconds. Immunity effects or the death of the tentacle free the target. And finally, Corruptor Tentacles. Erupt as they spawn, they cast Apathy, which reduces attack, casting, and movement speed by 60% for 20 seconds and can be dispelled. Black Plague, which stuns the target for 2 seconds every 3 seconds. Curse of Doom, which deals 20,000 shadow damage after 12 seconds, but can be decursed. And Draining Poison, which inflicts 3,500 nature damage and drains 1,400 mana every 3 seconds for 18 seconds. Phase 2 is the largest mechanical phase of the tier, and depending on which keeper's setup, it will require high levels of execution, mechanics, and DPS. This is where sanity begins to matter. First and foremost, assign 10 people to be your portal takers. These should be almost all melee, with 1 healer going in with them to keep them alive. As you're pushing for more difficult keepers, the DPS in there can survive without a healer, but they need to be able to clear the room fast. Each portal can take only 1 person before it disappears, so assign specific portals as well. The reason we select melee for this role is because they have a limited number of tentacles they can attack in the normal room, and they also clear the room at the bottom much faster than the range do. Up top, there is a priority for killing the tentacles. You want to always be focusing the Constrictor Tentacles first, then the Corruptor Tentacles, then the Crusher Tentacles. No melee DPS should ever DPS a Crusher Tentacle. They will kill your tank and possibly your raid if they do. Range DPS should also never put pets on the Crusher. This will force its slam and can kill your raid if it has too many stacks. Tanks should be going in and interrupting the diminished power cast when it's close to going off. Malady and brain links aren't something you'll really strategize for. Just move away from the target afflicted with malady and move close if you get linked. Communication is key to this phase. Now, let's talk about the brain room. There are 3 different rooms you will get when entering the brain portals. One looks like the throne room of Stormwind, one looks like the bottom of Wyrmrest Temple, and the third looks like the Knights of the Ebonblade room with a rune forge at the back. Each of these rooms have slightly different spawns of mobs. All mobs are yellow, so AoE will not hit them until they are attacked manually once. This is a good opportunity to use rocket boots to activate the far ones quickly. Keep in mind there are lunatic gazes in here. Face away from them. If you're taking sanity loss, you'll see a purple beam hitting you. Turn away from it. The spawns are as follows. For Wyrmrest Temple, there are 4 dragons on each side of the room, left and right. The Ebonblade room, there are groups of 3 tentacles on each side and a large pack of 4 in the back of the room. And the Stormwind room is just the same as Wyrmrest with 4 humans standing on each side of the room. Once you kill all of the adds, the illusion will shatter, and right where you came in, a new area will be available to enter the brain of Yogg-Saron. The DPS will smack down on the brain as much as they can until Induce Madness is about 5 to 10 seconds left. At that point, get out. You should be clicking the portal to get out at 5 seconds left on Induce Madness. Any longer and you will likely get mind controlled. In addition, up top, when the illusion is shattered, the tentacles will freeze and take additional damage. This is a great time to finish off any remaining Crusher tentacles that are up and keep upstairs clear. The faster the DPS downstairs do this, the longer the DPS upstairs have to clear the tentacles without damage going out. This will help the sanity issues and also help out healers. Once the brain hits 30%, the barrier around Yogg-Saron will dissipate, allowing everyone to attack him in full up top, beginning Phase 3, an old god. Yogg has 4 abilities during this phase. He'll cast Lunatic Gaze, which inflicts 6,000 shadow damage and reduces 4% sanity every 1 second as long as the target is facing Yogg-Saron. This is raid-wide and cast periodically with a visual effect. He casts Shadow Beacon, which targets an Immortal Guardian for empowering shadows. Then he has Empowering Shadows, which regenerates 37.5 thousand HP every 1 second for 20 seconds to nearby allies. It's cast on the Shadow Beacon 10 seconds after the buff is applied. And the fourth is Spawning Immortal Guardians. They start with 9 stacks of Empowered that increase their damage by 180% per stack. They lose a stack every 10% of their health removed. Immortal Guardians stop taking damage when their health reaches 1% and can only be killed by Thorim. They also cast Drain Life, which is an interruptible cast that will heal the Guardian during the cast. On the hard modes, he also casts Deafening Roar, which inflicts 8,000 physical damage and silences the raid for 4 seconds. This is only cast if you have less than 4 keepers assisting you. During this phase, the raid will stand in front of Yogg and melee DPS will cleave Yogg facing away from him, hitting the Immortal Guardians. Affliction Warlocks can do this as well by putting up their dots and casting Drain Soul while facing away. Shadow Priests also have this ability with dots and Mind Flay, but it's not quite as good. If you're doing this with all 4 keepers up, this phase is a breeze. If you've made it here, it's likely a kill with all the keepers. Just ensure your players are regenerating sanity if they're low using the wells around the room, they're the large green beams, and you're killing the Immortal Guardians. Thorim will execute them when they hit 1%. If you're doing this without the assistance of some keepers, this phase becomes substantially more difficult. If you've removed Freya, you no longer have the ability to regenerate sanity, so it is ever more important not to take any sanity loss during Lunatic Gaze. If you've removed Hodir, no one in your raid will be saved if they get low, they will just die. If you've removed Mimiron, the tentacles in Phase 2 will be harder to kill and harder to interrupt. Thorum is the only keeper that should remain alive for the main hard mode of this fight. Deafening Roar will be cast periodically if any keepers are not engaged. This works just like Ignis Flame Jets. It will deal damage to the raid and interrupt anyone casting for 4 seconds. Stop casting and heal up the damage. Use a raid cooldown if you need to. It is physical damage, so Aura Mastery is a good option here. The Guardians in Phase 3 can still be killed, and if you've made it this far, continue to manage your sanity, and this will be a kill. Yogg-Saron dies at around 1 to 2% HP. You don't need to reduce his health to 0% for a kill. Congratulations! You've saved Azeroth from another old god set on maddening the world. If you're looking for information on the Zero Light version of this fight, please check the description. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.